You are watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada. I am Jon Elmer. This is the Resistance Report for day 664 of this criminal madness. I am reporting this on the 31st of July, and as ever, everything you're going to see this week has been published by the Resistance since you last saw me. And also, as always, let's start with the maps. We've been using these United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs maps, which do not show Israeli control in Gaza. They show what are shoot to kill zones and evacuation zones in Gaza. And we have been counting this number up every week as we come on, and now we're up to 88% in shoot to kill zones. And you can see the three ghettos that are forming pretty clearly here. In the south, you see Al Mawasi on the coast at the bottom of that map from Khan Younis. In the middle camps, in Deir al-Bala is another zone, and then that's Gaza City that is being encroached upon with evacuation orders, but not Israeli control. And I always want to underscore that this is not about Israeli control. It's about where the shoot to kill zones are, and it's where the population is not anymore in all those purple areas. And that is where the resistance is fighting the Israelis every single day. Satellite imagery over the last few weeks has shown very little Israeli military advance. I think that's notable. We were talking on this program about the hundreds of operations in Khan Younis against the Israeli military, which was the focus of Israel's Gideon's Chariots operation that began in May. And there was a couple of several devastating operations that have led to troops being really zipped into their armored vehicles. And the forward advance is very little from the Israeli military, and Israeli military bloggers themselves have pointed this out, how there's very little action. The Israeli military, we're hearing that from them as well through their leaks, which are happening. We know that June was the deadliest month for the Israeli military in the past year, and July has matched June in that total. The Israeli Ministry of Defense's rehab department this week talked about 18,500 wounded soldiers in the war, which makes sense because throughout the war, they have been saying that there was at least 1,000 Israeli soldiers wounded every month of the battle. There's been, of course, periods of ceasefire in there, so 1,850 seems consistent with what they're releasing as the casualty counts. But again, on the week-to-week basis, month-to-month basis, we don't see any casualty counts. Those are hidden from us, from the public. And there's been, I talked about it last week, increasing volume within the Israeli press and military analysts. This week, Nahum Barnea, who's essentially the dean of the Israeli press corps, he wrote in 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐿 that the failure of the military campaign in Gaza should serve as a warning to Israeli army leaders. So he's a significant voice in the Israeli press. The New York Times had a headline this week: "Total failure. Israel's return to war heaped ruin on Gaza and did little for Israelis." And they quote Michael Milstein, who is an Amman Israeli military intelligence officer, and he said, "I have used these words, total failure. We are no closer to achieving our main goal, to erase the military and governmental capacities of Hamas, and Hamas has not become more flexible in the ceasefire talks. We find ourselves right now in a total disaster." Now, this is all consistent with what you've heard on the Resistance Report for the last coming up on 2 years now. Israel has not achieved its goals. They are well articulated. They are return the captives through violence. That has failed. Destroy the Qassam brigades. That has clearly failed. Destroy the government. We see the municipal and local government functioning, and to make Gaza no longer a threat, which I think is the least likely outcome of this war, with 50% of the population kids, witnessing what we have all witnessed for the last 2 years. Resistance is not going to die out based on this genocide. It'll only increase. Opposition leader Yair Lapid said that based on the intelligence and operational information that he has received due to his position. So he's talking about classified briefings that he gets. He says, the government has failed in the war. This is not a victory. It's a total disaster. And also, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 of 𝐄𝐥𝐿 wrote this week that more and more soldiers are reporting that officers are threatening them, including through their parents, if they complain about the distress and extreme workload in the media. Company and battalion commanders demand that their soldiers stay silent, handling issues only within the unit. On the other hand, the officers are required to meet mission demands no matter what, and those above them are not reflecting to the public and parents what is happening to the soldiers. And of course, we've seen the manpower shortages is a major story in Israel, and the 18,500 casualties, people taken off the battlefield, 1,000, they've admitted to upwards of 1,000 killed. As well, and they're not replacing those soldiers at the moment. If we take a look at this next map, you can see one of Israel's responses to this, to their campaign of starvation, has not worked in defeating the resistance or making the Palestinians surrender. It's, of course, worked very well in killing children and the weakest members of society who are in the most in need of nutrition, wounded people who are coming into the hospitals malnourished and unable to heal properly. That works. It works for genocide, but it hasn't got the Palestinians to surrender. And that's why there's a lot of talk in the media about what Ali just addressed as well. This next map, let's take a look at the zoom in on the south, because we're going to focus. Rafah is completely destroyed. Khan Younis is the target essentially of this phase of the Israeli operation that has been a failure. And if we look at the next map, you can see this is how far Abasan al-Kabira is, where the operation that I'm going to show you today was. It's also where many of the spectacular, notable operations that the Israelis know about and were upset about in their media because of the videos that were published of their defeats in that area. That's in Abasan al-Kabira on the east. It's just a few hundred meters from the buffer zone. So when we're talking about Israeli control, this is a Haaretz map, and that red is denotes destruction, not operational control. But when you're talking about operational control over these areas, Abasan al-Kabira is in the far east, right on the border, and the Israelis don't have operational control over that area, as we are going to see coming up in these videos. I'm going to just start before we go to the first video and just remind you that on February 20th, 2024, day 127, Army Radio says, Commander of the 98th Division, Brigadier General Dan Goldfuss, who commands the fighting in Khan Younis, the first battle of Khan Younis, said this evening, quote, "We dismantled Hamas in Khan Younis. We destroyed it underground and on land." So that was 537 days ago. It was as ridiculous at that point as it is today, but these operations today are going to show you that that is how absurd those statements of operational control have been throughout the war, which shows that Israel doesn't have a grasp on the battlefield, or they're just straight up lying to their population, probably both. And I just want to give you the field report for this operation before we watch it, because again, these field reports from Qassam are specifically, very particularly accurate. Qassam field report on the 26th of July. During a complex ambush, Al-Qassam fighters targeted 2 Zionist personnel carriers with 2 guerrilla action devices placed inside their cockpits, leading to the burning of the carriers and their crews. After that, our fighters targeted a 3rd Zionist personnel carrier with a Yasin 105 in the Abasan al-Kabira area east of Khan Younis and south of the Gaza Strip. Our fighters observed a military excavator burying the burning carriers to extinguish the fires as helicopters land for the evacuation. So that's the field report that comes out before anyone has seen any video. Let's look at that video now, number 6. We're going to see again showing the fighters doing their troop leading procedures. They're going over the operation. You can see the drone footage on the tablet. You can see the closed line that they use to talk to the spotters. The commander here is saying that our brothers in the surveillance unit assured us that there's 3 troop carriers in this position. He's pointing to them. They're 30 to 40 meters away from the tunnel entrance. Now we see the spotters position, seeing those a place where there's a concentration of armored vehicles. Now we see two fighters emerging from the tunnel. You can see them both getting their bearings, pointing and picking their targets based on their operational briefing. You can see the two guerrilla action devices there. Now we're looking at the fighter running towards the 𝐓𝐻 troop carrier. And this is higher than the Puma that we saw armored personnel carrier before, where the fighter just climbed up on top of it easily. This one you have to hike up. It's about 10 feet tall, so he's hiking up on top of it, pulls the detonator, drops it into the hatch, drops back down, and heads back to the tunnel. You can see right there, as he's running back, you can see it detonate on the way back to returning to his base safely. That's what I'm saying about being zipped in. These soldiers are inside their armored vehicles. And then here comes, like from the field report, there's the excavator burying the burning vehicle in with sand to put out the fire. Now, it's unclear if they've removed the casualties from this, because we know from the last operation where we saw this tactic be used, the Israelis allowed the carrier to burn and they towed it back to Israel with the soldiers inside burning, and made for recognition of their bodies extremely difficult. As Army radio reported, there was two killed reported by the Israelis on this, and multiple casualties in this operation. I'm going to just show you now a couple parts of this operation. So this is the beginning that I was talking about. You can see on the left, you see the phone, the closed line that the resistance has been using throughout this battle. The Israelis are not in on this line. This line connects to the tunnels, keeps the fighters underground and below ground connected, keeps the spotters connected. The commander saying that this information came from the spotter. You can see the diagram in the middle there that shows the targets. You can see the Qassam Brigade's internal memos on the right-hand side there, showing command and control. And you see a tablet from drone footage that the resistance has used to execute this operation. So again, like Abu Ubaidah said last week, these are high-level operations that are carried out. They're intelligence, reconnaissance, and surveillance-based operations. And that is why they're successful. They're not the product of the failures of Israeli military. These are the product of the success of the resistance preparation. So that is that first. You can also see in the top there the bark. That's the guerrilla action device. We saw that guerrilla action device last week in the videos from Jabalia, and seeing it again in Khan Younis is interesting. This looks like a device that they're manufacturing currently, presumably. They are filled with unexploded ordnance, and this is going to be a tool that we see the resistance using in the days ahead. If we go to the next one, you can see the still of the bark there, the guerrilla action device. Both fighters that come out of the tunnel, they both have one in their hands. One fighter goes one direction, one fighter goes the other direction, and only one of them has a camera on their head, but there's two parts to this operation. So it's interesting to note this new use of this weapon that looks like a miniature 𝐓𝐻𝐿, easier to carry, guerrilla action device, easier for the commando to navigate with rather than the heavier 𝐓𝐻𝐿. And because the spotters told them that the hatch is open on the 𝐓𝐻 troop carrier, that is what the surveillance is telling them. So they're using this device to attack that position, knowing that the hatch is open. So I think that's just a detail that I wanted to point out. The next one you could see, this is them coming out of the tunnel, number 9. You can see the two coming out. You see the two fingers there pointing because the fighters are coming up from underground and getting their bearings, and they're both figuring out their targets based on the troop leading procedure that they got from their commander. So I thought that was an interesting note. And then this next one is this came from the Israeli military through the Times of Israel, but you can see it says, according to the initial IDF probe, the soldiers were inside a 𝐓𝐻 armored personnel carrier that was hit by an explosive device during operations in Khan Younis. The military says is continuing to investigate how the bomb was detonated against the APC. And if we look at this next frame, you can see how the bomb was detonated against the ABC. The Israelis clearly have no clue what's going on, even after these operations are happening. You can see him pulling the detonator there and popping it in through the hatch. And you can see the way that the detonator works. There's two detonator pins for a left-handed or a right-handed person, one on the top, one on the side. He goes with it for his left hand here and misses, so then he switches to his right hand. Again, these are effective weapons, properly designed to be used in this moment where you can't be stumbling around looking for your detonator. He pulls the pin, and then he's got about 6 seconds before the detonation. The detonation mechanism triggers. He gets 6 seconds before it explodes. So that just a remarkable operation in Abasan al-Kabira. Just as we were coming on air, Army Radio reported on leaked drone footage. Again, we're seeing leaked drone footage from the Israelis. I think what we're seeing is pressure inside the Israeli military to try to end this, genocidal war. That they don't want to be a part of anymore, that they're getting killed, that they're working too hard. Like I said before, they're not allowed to speak honestly and openly. Their commanders are disciplining them. So Army Radio showed this drone footage of a large squad, 12 fighters with Yassins emerging from a tunnel earlier this week in Khan Younis and laying an ambush on an earthen embankment near a logistics route that IDF forces have been taking. So this is the capture operations that I also talked about last week on the show, and Abu Ubaidah said would be the focus of the resistance, and now we're seeing it from the Israeli side. Army Radio says IDF forces from the Golani's 13th Battalion identified the fighters using a drone, and when the Qassam fighters saw the drone, they retreated back into the tunnel to return to their base safely. It's not a suicide mission. They saw the mission wasn't going to be successful because of the drone, and they tactically withdrew for another day. So that's an interesting detail as well. And also Army Radio, just throw this in at the bottom, what the Army Radio correspondent says is significant about this event. He says, it's an event that shows the resistance are currently operating not only in small unorganized squads of 2 to 3, but large, well-armed squads familiar with the terrain. They arrived in a planned point. They arrived in a planned manner at the point, accompanied by remote drone operators, because Qassam had drones on this as well, and had a retreat route in case the plan went wrong. So just Army Radio admiring the resistance carrying out these operations effectively, something that we've been watching on this program for 664 days now. Let's move to the middle camps, number 12. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜 carried out an operation in the middle camps. This invasion of the middle camps that we saw last week was very short. The Israelis went in for, was measured in hours in the middle camps. So this operation happened at that time. They didn't get the video out, but Qassam did last week, and we saw 3 Yassin operations. 2 of them were tunnel-borne operations that met the Israelis immediately when they invaded the middle camps. So the middle camps brigade is ready in their fighting positions, waiting for 21 months. The Israelis come across and they're hit right away. This is 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜 operation from that day as well. And this is the surveillance footage of the detonation of that device. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜 is using pressure plate detonators. I'll show you that in the upcoming videos. But let's take a look at the north of Gaza, where there's also fighting. This is the same map that we showed you. The fighting has been east of Sahaadin Road, and that is the focus. Zaytun, Shujaiya, Tufa, and the eastern side of Jabalia city. They have not been fighting in Jabalia camp in this round. If we look at the next map, you can see that the Israelis had 3 divisions in this area, but they pulled out the 98th Division. Their commando brigade has been pulled out of Gaza, so there's now just the 2 in the north. And I just wanted to bring you this map because it more accurately shows where you might say the Israelis believe they have control over. It's a much, much smaller area than they're saying in their their statements that say 75% of Gaza is under their control. It's simply not true. In the bottom right of that map is Beit Hanun, and for the fifth time in this war, the Israelis have said that they have destroyed the Beit Hanun battalion. They said that there's one more week and they should be finished off, which is something that we have heard many times before in all of these areas, trying to claim victory in a war that they're not achieving their objectives in. If we look at number 15, this is another 𝐓𝐴 𝐿 operation. You can see them there with their IED, presumably filled again with unexploded ordnance. It said 𝐓𝐴 𝐿 on the IED, and this is the pressure plate detonators. And this is useful at this point in the war because of the shoot-to-kill zones cover so much territory in Gaza that anyone moving in that area is shot, killed, bombed. They're not shot, they're bombed. And so they plant these pressure plate detonators, and when the tank, what you're seeing here, there's a tank rolling over them, it trips them. So the fighters don't have to be in the position to press the detonator for when the Israelis then attack and bomb everything in the area, so the fighters can return to their base safely. And returning to their base safely has been a core part of the ability of the resistance to continue fighting this long. Now we'll take a look. We're going to move further north to Jabalia. Number 16. This video, I showed you this video on day 615. This was leaked video by the Israelis. You could see a 𝐓𝐶𝐞 fighter putting the Shawad at the back door of a Merkava tank and blowing it up. I zoomed it in for you so you can see that a little bit closer. People may remember when I showed this. This was leaked by the Israelis, but there was no operation or even a field report from 𝐓𝐶𝐞 that showed us what we were looking at from the ground. But they have done that this week, and they have published those videos, and publishing videos late or like weeks after the operation took place is something that we see. Operational security sometimes makes it so that the resistance doesn't want to release the videos, doesn't want to communicate through their channels. Maybe they think they don't want to risk the channel being compromised, and so they wait. We saw that in 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜 last year during the 3-week operation in 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜, and 𝐓𝐶𝐞 released all the videos afterwards. We even saw it in the first 𝐶 Younis battle last December to April, that the 𝐶 Younis brigade wasn't immediately releasing videos because of operational reasons, and that's what we're seeing here in these next videos. These are operations by the 𝐶 brigades that were executed in June and July. So here's that operation that we saw leaked from the Israelis. You see the fighter here attaching the detonator pin that we saw on the Bark guerrilla action device. This is it being done on the Shawad. He's putting the detonator into the top there, and he's going to do what we just saw on the Israeli video. But now we're seeing that same video from the inside, and they have used, 𝐓𝐶𝐞 has used the cut from the Israelis to show that. But we saw him inside that building, and this is now the second time we've seen 𝐓𝐶𝐞 release footage that had previously been shown by leaked Israeli drone footage. So that is notable. And then the leak today that I just reported on is another notable one. So we're getting these leaks from the Israelis more regularly, although we have gotten them all through the war. And many of the leaks, they don't make the Israeli military look good. They often are seen in the Palestinian community as heroic operations that the Israelis are showing, or they're the ones where the Israelis are getting shot inside buildings and are falling down stairs, and it's not clear what the Israelis think they're getting out of these this footage. This operation is a historic operation that people will talk about for a long time to come. So what they think they're getting out of releasing it is not at all clear. But that's the operation from 𝐓𝐶𝐞 sides. Number 18 is another Shawad from the rubble operation. You can see the fighters in the rubble here. You're going to see the tank straight ahead, and the fighters got the Shawad there. You get the green triangle for the Shawad, the red for the tank. And these operations that you're going to see, these next few, so he's setting up the Shawad. He can't get closer because of all of the wreckage in the way, but he pulls the pin. He gets 6 seconds, gets back down underground underneath the demolition. There you see the 𝐄𝐤𝐚 detonate. And this is interesting. We'll just look at it one more time, because the reason why this operation can take place is because of this stage of the war. Israel's using excavators to drop these houses. So they're going one by one through the houses and pulling them down. They're not bombing them into a pile of rubble. They're pulling them down and leaving these pockets that we're watching the resistance use to attack Israeli vehicles from the pockets. So just adaptations throughout the war that we've seen are just notables. You see him go down into an area there that would be blown up if the Israelis used aerial bombs to hit that target. And you're going to see that a couple other times. Number 19. We have a 𝐓𝐡𝐞 strike against a Merkava tank. This was July 16th, according to 𝐓𝐡𝐞. You can see the tank there with its turret turned, and you're going to see the Archer hit a direct hit on this tank, as usual. The 𝐓𝐡𝐞 is a very accurate weapon from the distance that the fighters use it for. You can clearly see that is a direct hit. You're going to see a direct hit in the next footage as well. But again, destruction everywhere. And the resistance these are not controlled areas. When your tanks are getting blown up, you do not have operational control over the area, because operational control would mean that your tank can roll through there and execute the task that they're tasked with, and that's not what's happening when they're hit with these 𝐓𝐡𝐞 strikes. So again, you see the tank moving there, and the Archer is in the next window from the cameraman. You can see the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 overpressure blows the camera, which we have seen all through the war. The next one that you see here is 𝐓𝐡𝐞 strike against a Namr. This is again also in earlier in July, and you can see the fighter with his 𝐓𝐡𝐞 here. And again, what I was talking about, you see it's created, the excavators have created these pockets in the rubble, and the resistance is using these pockets. That's a Namr troop carrier, so you could have a dozen people in there depending on the formation, but you're going to see on the left side the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 will come through there and hit on the left side of your screen. You can see another direct hit by these anti-tank weapons that were created by the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 brigades, and they still have enough of these to carry out the battles 664 days later. Number 21 is another tactical use of drones. So this is a 𝐓𝐡𝐞 drone being used here to track an engineering unit, and then because they have drone footage, they can see where the armored vehicles are. They know they have a little bit of time to come out in the street and bury this IED. And of course, they can bury it in the street because the Israelis have torn everything up and made them easy to bury and easy to hide that they're buried. And there you're seeing the detonation from a surveillance camera. I think it's a surveillance camera, although this move here that you'll see here, that jerk does sound, that seems like a drone footage, that camera jerk there. Okay, we can go to number 22. This is an excavator that's doing what I've been talking about, pushing the houses down. And this excavator dropped the house on top of the excavator arm. So now the fighters are using the pocket that was created, and the a radia there, that's the anti-personnel or against a light vehicle like this excavator is, that is now stuck in the rubble. You can see its bucket there stuck under the building, and it's blown up. So they're down an excavator on that operation. Again, that was in early July, and these are all operations from Jabalia, all released by 𝐓𝐡𝐞. And number 23 is the footage that was also, this was released in June by the Israelis, and 𝐓𝐡𝐞 is showing us this again, just their D9 destroyed bulldozer. You can clearly see it was hit there on the side, clearly see it was hit by a 𝐓𝐡𝐞, and it's being dragged by two other D9 bulldozers. And last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago on the show, I showed you how the D9s are being unloaded from the US. The US is resupplying them with these vehicles, but it's just a pathetic view of the literally dragging these destroyed things through through the genocidal landscape that they have created here. And just on a final note, a poster by 𝐓𝐡𝐞 published this week showing a fighter with a Yasin, and that tank is from Beit Hanun. That was the one that was split in Beit Hanun. The tank had its turret tossed. And then that's the quote from Abu Ubaidah that I read you last week. The resistance in Gaza is the greatest military school in contemporary history for a people's resistance against their occupier, as I think those videos have more than shown. So that is the resistance report for day 664 of this war.